Welcome to Pastor Andrew's Inspirations. If you enjoy these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and click on the bell for more videos. Welcome to our online church, a congregation made up of many from around the world. No offering is necessary. Subscribing and watching videos will keep us alive under God's watchful eyes. Today, we are talking about the biblical names starting with D, Part 1. Dagon. Dagon was a god worshipped in ancient Syria across the middle of the Euphrates, especially in Tutul and Turka, and known in Mesopotamia, where rulers regarded him as the god capable of granting them kingship over the western areas. Confirmations of Dagon from coastal areas are much less frequent and come mostly from Ugarit. In the Hebrew Bible, Dagon is referenced 3 times as the head god of the Philistines. There are no references to Dagon as a Canaanite god. According to the Bible, his temples were located at Beth Dagon in the territory of the tribe of Asher in Joshua chapter 19, verse 27, and in Gaza in Judges chapter 16, verse 23, which tells soon after how the temple is destroyed by Samson as his last act. Another temple located in Ashdod was mentioned in 1 Samuel chapter 5, verses 2 to 7, and again as late as 1 Maccabees chapter 10, verse 83, and chapter 11, verse 4. King Saul's head was displayed in a temple of Dagon after his death in 1 Chronicles chapter 10, verses 8 to 10. There was also a second place known as Beth Dagon in Judah in Joshua chapter 15, verse 41. The account in 1 Samuel chapter 5, verses 2 to 7 relates how the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Philistines and taken to Dagon's temple in Ashdod. The following morning, the Ashdodites found the image of Dagon lying prostrate before the ark. They set the image upright, but again, on the morning of the following day, they found it prostrate before the ark again. But this time, with head and hands severed, lying on the Mipton, translated as threshold or podium. The account continues with the puzzling words, "Only Dagon was left to him." Dagon is also mentioned in the first book of Ethiopian Maccabees, chapter 12, verse 12, which was composed sometime in the 4th century AD. Dalphon. Dalphon, meaning to weep, was one of the 10 sons of Haman, killed along with Haman by the Jews of Persia, according to Esther chapter 9, verse 7. Damaris. Damaris is the name of a woman mentioned in a single verse in Acts of the Apostles, chapter 17, verse 34. As one of those present when Paul of Tarsus preached in Athens, in front of the Athenian Areopagus in AD 55, together with Dionysius the Areopagite, she embraced the Christian faith following Paul's Areopagus sermon. The verse reads, "Howbeit certain men clave unto him, and believed, among the which was Dionysius the Areopagite, and a woman named Damaris, and others with them. As usually, women were not present in Areopagus meetings. Damaris has traditionally been assumed to have been a courtesan, high-status prostitute. Some have suggested she might have been a follower of the Stoics, who welcomed women among their ranks. The Georgian text of Acts makes Damaris the wife of Dionysius. She is a saint of the Greek Orthodox Church, remembered on October 3rd, together with Dionysius the Areopagite and 2 other disciples of Dionysius, who also became martyrs. In modern Athens, Saint Damaris is also honored by having a street named after her. Otis Damarios. Siding the Prophetess Ilias Square, which is one of the main urban open spaces in the Pakrati neighborhood. Dan. According to the book of Genesis, Dan was the 5th son of Jacob and the 1st son of Bilhah. He was the founder of the Israelite tribe of Dan. In the biblical account, Dan's mother is described as Rachel's handmaiden, who becomes one of Jacob's wives. He was the father of Hushim, according to Genesis chapter 46, verse 23. Samson was a descendant of Dan. The text of the Torah explains that the name of Dan derives from Danani, meaning he has judged me, in reference to Rachel's belief that she had gained a child as the result of a judgment from God. Owing to the book of Judges in the account of Micah's idol, describing the tribe of Dan as having used ephod and teraphim in worship. Samson, a member of the tribe of Dan, being described as failing to adhere to the rules of a Nazirite. Classical writers concluded that Dan was very much a black sheep. In the book of Jeremiah, the north of Canaan is associated with darkness and evil. Some sources treated Dan as the archetype of wickedness. In the apocryphal testaments of the patriarchs, Dan is portrayed as having hated Joseph, having been the one that invented the idea of deceiving Jacob by the smearing of Joseph's coat with the blood of a kid. In the apocryphal prayer of Arsanath, Dan is portrayed as plotting with the Egyptian crown prince against Joseph and Asenath. In the blessing of Jacob, Dan is described as a serpent, which seems to have been interpreted as connecting Dan to Belial, a connection made in the apocryphal testament of Dan. Early Christian writers, such as Irenaeus and Hippolytus, believed that the Antichrist would come from the tribe of Dan. Drawing the belief from a verse from the book of Jeremiah, which states, "The snorting of the enemy's horses was heard from Dan," John the Apostle omits the tribe of Dan when mentioning the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel. In regard to the 144,000 sealed Israelites, instead of Dan, the tribe of Joseph appears twice. Daniel. Daniel meaning God is my judge. the hero of the biblical book of Daniel, is a noble Jewish youth of Jerusalem taken into captivity by Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, serving the king and his successors with loyalty and ability until the time of the Persian conqueror Cyrus, all the while remaining true to the God of Israel. 6 cities claim the tomb of Daniel, the most famous being that in Susa, in southern Iran, at a site known as Shushay Daniel. He is not a prophet in Judaism, but the rabbis reckoned him to be the most notable member of the Babylonian diaspora, unsurpassed in piety and good deeds, firm in his devotion to the law, despite being surrounded by enemies who sought his ruin. In the first few centuries CE, they wrote down the many legends that had grown up around his name. He is considered a prophet in Christianity, and although he is not mentioned in the Quran, Muslim sources describe him as a prophet. Daniel's name means God is my judge. While the best known Daniel is the hero of the book of Daniel, who interprets dreams and receives apocalyptic visions. The Bible also briefly mentions 3 other individuals of this name. The book of Ezekiel, chapter 14, verses 14 and 20. In chapter 28, verse 3, refers to a legendary Daniel famed for wisdom and righteousness. In verse 14, Ezekiel says of the sinful land of Israel that even if these 3, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they would deliver but their own lives by their righteousness. In chapter 28, Ezekiel taunts the king of Tyre, asking rhetorically, "Art thou wiser than Daniel?" The author of the book of Daniel appears to have taken this legendary figure, renowned for his wisdom, to serve as his central human character. The book of Ezra, chapter 8, verse 2, mentions a priest named Daniel who went from Babylon to Jerusalem with Ezra. And the first book of Chronicles, chapter 3, verse 1, mentions a son of David called Daniel. The New Testament makes a reference to Daniel at Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, in reference to the abomination of desolation. He is commemorated in the Coptic Church on the 23rd day of the Coptic month of Baramhat. On the Eastern Orthodox liturgical calendar, the feast day celebrating Saint Daniel the prophet together with the 3 young men falls on December 17th. During the Nativity fast, on the Sunday which falls between the 11th and 17th of December, and on the Sunday before Nativity, Daniel's prophecy regarding the stone which smashed the idol in Daniel chapter 2 verses 34 and 35 is often used in Orthodox hymns as a metaphor for the incarnation. The stone cut out being symbolic of the Christ, and the fact that it was cut without hands being symbolic of the virgin birth. Thus the hymns will refer to the Virgin Mary as the uncut mountain. The Roman Catholic Church commemorates Saint Daniel in the Roman Martyrology on July the 21st. Some local liturgical calendars of dioceses also list his feast, sometimes on July 21st and sometimes on another day. The Archdiocese of Gorizia celebrates the feast of St. Daniel, prophet and confessor, on September the 11th. The reading of the Mass is taken from the book of Daniel, chapter 14. The gradual from Psalm 91. The Alleluia verse from the Epistle of James 1. And the Gospel from Matthew chapter 24. The calendar of the saints of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod commemorates Daniel, together with the three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, on December the 17th. Darda. Darda, a pearl of wisdom. Darda was one of the exemplars of wisdom, than whom Solomon was wiser. In 1 Chronicles chapter 2 verse 6, his name is misspelled as Dara. Darius. Darius meaning he that informs himself of a king. Darius I, commonly known as Darius the Great, was the third Persian king of kings of the Achaemenid Empire, reigning from 522 until his death in 486 BCE. He ruled the empire at its peak, when it included much of West Asia, parts of Caucasus, parts of the Balkans, or Thrace, Macedonia, and Paeonia, most of the Black Sea coastal regions, Central Asia as far as the Indus Valley in the Far East, and portions of North and Northeast Africa, including Egypt, Eastern Libya, and coastal Sudan. Darius ascended the throne by overthrowing the legitimate Achaemenid monarch Bardia, whom he later fabricated to be an impostor named Gwamara. The new king met with rebellions throughout his kingdom and quelled them each time. A major event in Darius's life was his expedition to punish Athens and Eretria for their aid in the Ionian revolt and subjugate Greece, although ultimately ending in failure at the Battle of Marathon. Darius succeeded in the re-subjugation of Thrace, the expansion of the empire through the conquest of Macedon, the Cyclades and the island of Naxos, and the sacking of the city of Eretria. Darius organized the empire by dividing it into provinces and placing satraps to govern it. He organized Achaemenid coinage as a new uniform monetary system, along with making Aramaic the official language of the empire. He also put the empire in better standing by building roads and introducing standard weights and measures. Through these changes, the empire was centralized and unified. Darius also worked on construction projects throughout the empire, focusing on Susa, Pasargada, Persepolis, Babylon, and Egypt. He had the cliff face Behistun inscription carved to record his conquest, an important testimony of the old Persian language. Darius is mentioned in the biblical books of Haggai, Zechariah, and Ezra, Nehemiah. Darkon. Darkon, bearer or scattering, possibly related to Aramaic terms for hasten or shield, in Ezra chapter 2 verse 56 and Nehemiah chapter 7 verse 58, which both reproduce versions of the same list. The sons and or descendants of Darkon appear as one of the groups of the descendants of Solomon's servants. They were said to have returned from the Babylonian captivity to Jerusalem and Judah. Dathan. Dathan, meaning belonging to law. Dathan was an Israelite mentioned in the Old Testament as a participant of the Exodus. He was a son of Eliab, the son of Palu, the son of Reuben, together with his brother Abiram, the Levite Korah, and others. He rebelled against Moses and Aaron. The book of Numbers relates that the earth opened her up, or opened her mouth, and swallowed them up and their houses, in the book of Numbers chapter 16 verse 31. This was people in the Bible, starting with D. Part 1. Adonai Nisi, the Lord is our banner. Remember, if you like these videos, please click on the red subscribe button below and click the bell to get more notifications. God's blessings be upon this message and us all.